We like to believe that we have full control of our brains, but the fact of the matter is that our brains have developed all sorts of patterns that can influence our decisions without us even knowing it. And these can be used for good or for bad, both by companies and by people. And one of the really powerful tools is something called the mere exposure effect. So whether you are a customer wanting to be more aware of how businesses might be utilizing this to get you to do certain things, or you're a business looking to figure out how you can grow and connect with more potential customers, then let's dive into the mere exposure effect, what it is, and how to use it. Hello, my name is Emma Schumer-Tamir. I am the CEO and co-founder of Marketing by Emma, and I am such a geek for human psychology and all of the ways that our brains work for and against us. And one particular cognitive bias that I find particularly interesting is something called the mere exposure effect. And this is pretty wild. So essentially, the mere exposure effect means that purely by how frequently we are exposed to something, we actually start to feel favorably towards it. So in other words, if you are seeing an ad for a company every single day, and maybe you're not even paying attention to that ad, but you just kind of see it as you're scrolling through your preferred social media. That's the only thing that's happening, nothing else. You're not engaging with the ad, you're not hearing people talking about it, you're just seeing it. The more frequency that you are exposed to something, the more you are going to be predisposed to liking that thing. I'm not sure if you're fully getting that, so let's just pause for a moment and really let that sink in. The more you are exposed to something, the more favorably you will feel to that thing just by coming into frequent contact with it. Is that not just the craziest thing? It could be good or bad, that doesn't matter, but purely by seeing something over and over and over again, we are getting primed to feel positively about that thing. So what does that mean for us as customers or as businesses? Let's dive into that. But before we do, if you like this, please give it a like, drop a comment below if your mind is totally blown, or if you're like, whatever, I know all about this, give me something juicy and new. You can leave a suggestion for future comment below, future video below. And I would also greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe. So now let's dive back into the mere exposure effect. This is really something that's primarily happening in your top of funnel marketing efforts. So this can be something that you are applying to your content marketing strategy or your general advertising strategy. Ideally, it would be both, because the principle says that the more we're exposed to something, the more positively we're going to feel about it. So what does this mean? The mere exposure effect is very top of funnel marketing. If you're not familiar with what I mean by top of funnel, essentially you have a sales funnel, sort of an upside down triangle. And the very top is awareness. So it's really just, you need to kind of become known to any potential customer that you're eventually going to make a sale to. And so this can apply to your content marketing, this can apply to your advertising, and this can also apply to things like influencer marketing. But the idea is really that the more that you are out there, the more that you are having an opportunity to come into contact with customers on a regular basis, the more you're going to be priming them to just be more familiar with you, and then as a result, be more to prefer your company over the other options when they get to the stage of wanting to actually buy a product or a service or whatever it is that you are selling them. So if you can imagine, this is something that you want to be very aware of as a customer, because if you are constantly seeing something, you might assume that by just the way that your brain is teaching you to perceive things, that is automatically better, but that's not necessarily the case. So from a customer perspective, you want to make sure that you are really doing your thorough research and making sure that you are finding a product that's going to be a great fit for you. Now, what does this mean as a brand? This means different things to brands that are in different stages. So if you are launching a new brand, then you really need to make a splash and get in front of as many of your target customers as possible. How you do that is, of course, going to depend on who your customers are, where they are, and what they're caring about. So you want to be sure to be highly targeted. I actually have a video where I'll be going into how to develop a customer avatar that should be coming up soon if it hasn't posted already. If it has, I will go ahead and link it in the eye. But one of the other big things is that you can actually combine this with one of the other cognitive biases that I've recently spoken about for even greater impact. So if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you take a look at the halo effect video, because the halo effect says that if we perceive one characteristic of something as positive, then we're automatically going to have a preference for that. So if you can combine the halo effect and the mere exposure effect together, there is tremendous power there to quickly and effectively get people more positively associating your brand over all of the other options that are out there. So there's a lot of power there. And that's why you're going to see brands and they're going to be sponsoring things, or they're going to be advertising all over the place, or they're going to be doing these huge campaigns where all of these different influencers are talking about and using and wearing and interacting with their products. The reason for that is because they understand the principle of just exposing themselves. So they don't necessarily need to be asking for the sale. They don't necessarily need to be making any kind of hard push or strong CTA in this style of marketing and advertising, because it's not about that yet. We are simply priming the pump with customers that are going to have familiarity and a liking for our brand. That is the main goal. And so it's really important as you are developing out your campaigns and your strategies to be aware of what stage your customers are in when they're going to be engaging with these different pieces of content. And if you're going to be too aggressive with your sale in that initial exposure, then that could actually turn people away. So that could actually be the opposite of the halo effect, which is something called the horn effect, which is if we have a negative perception of one aspect of something, then we'll immediately think of that whole thing as bad. So that's definitely not something that you want to be tapping into. But let's get back to the mere exposure effect. How can this be used in order to make your marketing dollars go further, make your advertising campaigns more effective, and really generate a constant stream of new, eager customers? That's what you need to be thinking about when you are considering top of funnel marketing strategy and what you can do to simply be there when your customers are not even necessarily looking. There are a variety of different ways that you can choose to go about really tapping into this mere exposure effect. So everything from partnerships and collaborations to influencers to content marketing across every type of platform. But if you always make sure to first and foremost think about who your customers are and then the kinds of content that they're going to be engaging with, that will probably give you a strong direction of where to focus your time, your energy, and your budget in order to be making strong decisions. So in the case of growing our agency, Marketing by Emma, one of the things that I did very early on was I began to seek out and accept opportunities to speak places, everything from live events to podcasts and webinars, also collaborations on things like blog posts and like YouTube videos. And I was doing all of these things, both in order to be able to build up reputation and strengthen those relationships, but even more significantly, really being able to just become familiar to my audience and my potential future customers, because I understood that if they've never engaged with me before, then it's going to be much harder to be able to eventually make any kind of business deal. However, if they've been familiar with me, if they've had an opportunity to engage with my content, understand where I'm coming from, what I'm about, then that in turn is going to make them more open to having those conversations about how we can work together. And that was tremendously valuable for growing our business in a very organic way. And there are lots of different ways that you can do this no matter what industry you're in. So if you don't have a big advertising budget, don't let that limit your ability. There are so many tools at your disposal, and it may just require a little bit of creativity. So that's the mere exposure effect. Let me know what you think. Is this something that you were aware of, or are you just being exposed, to it? Couldn't help myself, for the first time. If you like this, please like, comment, subscribe. I really like geeking out about marketing psychology and how our brains work for and against us. So if you like this kind of content, definitely be sure to stay tuned because I have a lot more coming. And thank you so much. Bye.